Achtung! Once again, it's a bite-sized pod from James and I, just to tide you over until tonight's live show. Of course, live show, that could be something filthy good, but it's not. It's not. Yes, we're firing up the engines again tonight, having a final tot of rum, then heading into the darkness in the back of a stolen Junkers 52. What is the range on that aircraft, actually? The plan is to muster at 8. Let's say that, look, the War Eagles there, guys, they're flying in from Italy or somewhere. They can't, because it's Bavaria, isn't it?
Well, it's the Alps, isn't it? So the actual Schloss, which obviously isn't the real Schloss, is in southern Austria.
Yeah.
600 miles. I mean, you know, when is it supposed to take place? Is it 1943 or 44?
It's pre-D-Day, isn't it? It's 44 because he's got the plans for D-Day in his head, isn't he?
Oh yeah, okay. So it can't be higher than just southern Italy. Yeah, you're stretching it just that alone, aren't you?
Just that alone. Anyway, well, we hope you enjoyed us nitpicking like a pair of annoying arseholes the other night. Anyway, the plan for the live show tonight is to muster at 8:30 and hope to get into the air pretty quickly. In the meantime, we've got a couple of fascinating bits of correspondence to discuss. This is from Richie Campbell. Love the pod and have really enjoyed The Cauldron, superbly read by Al. Thank you very much, Richie. I really enjoyed reading it. It's also great to share a book that you love with lots of people who may not know it and all that sort of thing. Hopefully a reprint is going to happen somehow. It got me thinking about the book I've just finished, The Lions of Carentan, about the 6th Fallschirmjäger Regiment. The Cauldron was intense, but lasted only a couple of weeks or so for the protagonists. The Fallschirmjäger were in combat almost constantly from 1943 onwards, with a non-stop spell between D-Day and the end of the war. An astonishing feat of arms and mental fortitude, and a shame they don't get the recognition due to the toxic regime they served. Amazing nonetheless, and they were also of the greatest generation, even if they were on the losing side. Do you agree, or am I off the mark with this? Anyway, keep up the excellent pod and stay safe. All the best, Richie Campbell, ex-First Scots Guards. That's an interesting point.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
But all the German units, though, I mean, you could pick any German unit that was basically, from 1943, was in combat non-stop, you know, all the time. And for Fallschirmjäger in 1944... we're not talking the Fallschirmjäger of 1940 or 41, are we? That basically you have huge because there's an awful lot of paratroopers, aren't there, in the Luftwaffe by this point, and not all of them have had parachute training, and not all of them are the sort of crack tough nut hard bastards that their predecessors were.
Certainly not. And but I became really good mates with a guy called Heinz Puschmann, who actually emigrated to Auckland after the war. So I interviewed him in New Zealand. But he was a lovely guy. God, he was such a good bloke. But the reason I originally got to speak to him was less for Normandy and more for Italy, because he was very, very badly wounded in Normandy. Got basically shot in the head, but survived amazingly. You've interviewed Carl Leifert. And do you remember he was tough as old boots, wasn't it? And he might have been 94, but you could still tell that this was a guy you wouldn't cross even at his age, let alone when he was 21 or something.
Yeah, he'd have crept into your bed and breakfast and slit your throat if you'd said something wrong that morning.
Yeah, he would. He absolutely would. And I remember you asking him, saying, what was the worst thing that happened to you in the war? And he said, having to surrender.
Yeah.
And he said it with no trace of irony. I mean, it was having to, he'd been overrun in Normandy, hadn't he? And having to, and being cornered and having no choice but to kind of throw the towel in. For him, that still really hurt. So these guys were super tough. Heinz wasn't, and he was on the field telephone to his best mate down on a different part of their front on D-Day when he heard his friend scream and the line went dead. So and he'd bought it. So and he understandably got very upset recounting this story. But then I've also written a lot about a guy called Martin Purple, who was in Norway, France, Crete. I've just been writing about him in Sicily. He was in Normandy, and he's obviously just a really good, tough soldier. But, there's lots of stuff about, we were the Führer's best and we never retreated. And as long as we could keep fighting, we were happy. And, occasionally we thought of home, but we didn't allow thoughts of home to interrupt our minds too much because we were the Hitler's best troops, and we had a war to fight, and that's what we were all about. So they, I don't know. I mean, yeah, I mean they were clearly remarkable men for the most part, but there was a little bit. They were a little bit more Nazi than most.
Yeah.
And they just were. They're kind of not far off SS. In terms of attitude and lack of commitment,
motivation, politically motivated is
absolutely,
and also so much of the, certainly the last year of the Second World War, comes down an awful lot to people's political motivation.
Yes,
which one of the reasons, if you want to call the Allies slow, it's because they're fighting people who really, 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 really don't want to surrender. Like you've just said, they're not interested in losing the war, or it's even that Nazi thing of destruction. One way or another, we'll go down, and if it involves the destruction of everything, well, whatever.
Yeah.
Which is
a lot of that.
The Hitlerian attitude, certainly, but the last 6 months of the war, that's Hitler's attitude completely, isn't it? It's like, all right then, we'll everything will fall in on us then.
First of all, we've talked a lot about German massacres of Italian civilians in the Apennines and stuff, and Monticelli and all the rest of it. The people the guy who issued the order for the Monticelli massacre, for example, was General Schlemm, who was commander of the 1st Fallschirmjäger Corps on the Gothic line. The other thing is there's Van der Heide is the guy who was the commander of the 6th Fallschirmjäger Regiment, and he's also seen as a kind of inverted commas sort of good German. Just an honest soldier who was doing his bit and all the rest of it. But one of the reasons is that is because he spoke English and he was posh. So after the war, he kind of wrote down stuff, and everyone thought, oh, well, he's learned, sort of, he's sort of one of us because he can speak English and he's sort of educated and all the rest of it. But again, you've still got to sort of slightly question his motivations, haven't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And you'd think after if the result had gone the other way, whether any posh English soldiers would have been offered that kind of treatment.
Yeah, quite.
Anyway, right. Now Richard Trainer got in touch via the Patreon, and God bless you all, the independent company. What was the role of the black market and its influence, good and bad? I know that as a democracy, the Brits still had to go through alternative channels to source certain items. This cascades up from tactical through operational to strategic, I reckon.
Oh, he's just trying to get me to say it, isn't he?
He is. He's just trying to get you to say it.
Well, I don't really see.
What if I
really
say
see
it? Does it count if I say it? Does it count? If I say operational level, you see, does it count? Well, I mean, certainly after D-Day, you do have this enormous black economy being run by the Allies, and certainly by the American Quartermaster General is right up to his neck in it, living in the Georges V Hotel in Paris, sleeping in the finest silk sheets, blah blah blah, and. I think that you certainly on the Allied side, you get a kind of resignation to the idea this is going to happen, and so what you gonna do, don't you? Would you?
Yeah, I mean, in Italy, the black market was absolutely rampant and made a lot of people's lives very, very miserable. So I cannot see a single good thing for that that's come out of that at all. And lots of American, Italian gangsters came over who were already sort of left America earlier before the war, now absolutely kind of filled their boots, not least Vito Genovese, who was number 2 to Lucky Luciano when Luciano was first banged up, and was still running his sort of gangster operations from the other side. And people like Vito Genovese got very, very rich very, very quickly by kind of totally monopolising the black market and just made people's lives absolutely miserable. I mean, there's this incredible statistic from southern Italy in the first half of 1944 where it was reckoned that 46% of all available women from the age of 16 to 50 had VD. Yeah. And that is because of the black market and because the Allies, with a sort of slight kind of level of vindictiveness, set the rate of the lira to at the wrong level, and so there was it just they had nothing. I mean, basically a postman was living off $1 a month equivalent, and it just obviously wasn't enough. And so what do? There's no food because the whole infrastructure's collapse because there's no trains, there's no electricity, there's no means of getting flour to the mills and all the rest of it. So what do? You have to forage, or you have to kind of prostitute yourself to get tins of stuff from American troops and British troops. Yeah,
but then you also get that thing of in Germany in 1945, after the end of the war, there's the British soldiers saying, "I don't need to rape anyone when I can get what I want because I've got corned beef and cigarettes on me.
Yeah.
That when people talk about how did the different armies behave differently in post-war Germany, that the British and the Americans did like this. There is this account. I think it's in Alan Allport's book, Demobbed, where he talks about this fraternization, and there's a British soldier going, well, I don't have to rape anybody. What I can just give them stuff and they do what I want, and that entire I mean, it's all pretty bleak, all that, but gosh.
Yeah, but I can't see how there's any good influence of the black market, is there? I can't. Not that I.
No, nor can I. I mean, the thing is, I remember during after the Iraq War, I remember one thing that when the British were running Basra, one thing they said they were doing was leaving large amounts of sort of copper wire around to be stolen, so that people could then buy, sell it on, and create get an economy going by creating a black market. And you think I remember reading this thing and some soldier saying this. You think some general going, "You are nowhere near as clever as you think you are, mate." That is a lousy fucking idea. And lo and behold, there we are.
Yeah, there you go.
Anyway, that's all we have time for, ladies and gents. Join us tonight at 8:30. We'll tweet out the link later. See you then.
Cheerio.